How do professional golfers endure the mental health struggles and failures that come with the game of golf? We speak more about this with professional golfer Andrew Jensen in this episode of Iggy's Sports Talk.
Yeah. Hold up. Wait until the whole team show up. Yeah.
I want to welcome you back into Iggy's Sports Talk, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Jake Azuski, or Iggy for short. And if this is your first time listening on this podcast, in each and every single episode, my goal is to inspire you through different stories of athletes, influencers, musicians, business professionals, on how they've overcome their mental health struggles or overcome adversity throughout their life and what they've learned on the other side of those experiences. But in this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with professional golfer and suicide survivor, Andrew Jensen. And him and I speak more about how he's overcome not only his mental health struggles, but his suicidal thoughts, not only his personal life, but throughout his professional life as a golfer, the lessons he learned through those experiences, and much, much more. Now let's get into my conversation with Andrew Jensen. Professional golfer, YouTube content creator, public speaker, and mental health advocate, Andrew Jensen. So how are we doing today, Andrew?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me. It's actually a Bell Let's Talk day back home, so it's a good day to talk about everything. Health, or doing good today.
That's good to hear, man. And how's your 2022 been going so far? I saw that you recently had a newborn son. So how's that acclimation been going so far?
So he's 5 months. I'll pull no punches. It's the hardest thing I've ever. I think a lot of people want to romanticize babying and parenting and all that. It's really difficult, but it's like the flip side. It's like the best thing ever. So it's been something else. Like I'm kind of on full-time stay-at-home dad duty for the first 2 months of the year. So by that accounts, I mean, it's 2022 is the best year ever, because I always kind of remind myself, like if I was still playing full-time, I wouldn't have this opportunity. So the ups and downs of my career leading me to being a YouTuber now, and it being a slow time of year for YouTube, I'm able to spend a lot of time with my son, and like, man, I will never take that for granted.
Yeah, I mean, especially like you say he's 5 months, so those early stages, the first words when he starts walking, those types of early stages are so important.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet. We're babbling a lot, but it's just like this is when his personality starts to show. But again, I think of some of my peers. A great example, even when I was filming in December with Echo and Eric, he has a daughter who's a month older than my son, and he was on the road for the first 12 weeks of his daughter's life. And it's like, man, I remember friends going through that when I was playing full time, and like, I couldn't imagine that anymore. There's no way. My life's changed so much, and I wouldn't want it any other way, really. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't even imagine, obviously, the difference between getting a video or picture from your wife, like instead of actually being there to enjoy it. But outside of golf, like we're recording this at the end of January. Like, what has been one of your favorite moments outside of golf so far in 2022?
I don't know, man. Not much. I mean, just there's not been many highlights. It's only the 26th of January. Best moment of the year. Oh man, I don't know. I can't even pinpoint. They've all been great. Just I'm sure I've just shared a lot of cool laughs with my son and with my wife that you don't really. It's the good thing. Like, you don't reach for the phone to do it. You're just kind of in it. So I'd say that, like, yeah, just all these little cool moments I'm having being a dad.
Yeah, I bet those must be really fun. And the memories of the early days are something that you'll never forget. And especially like yourself, as a professional golfer, we can start diving into the game of golf, because I think it's so fascinating how, like, golf is sort of like a metaphor for life. And I read a quote from Nick Saban that I thought was really cool. He said, you can get up and down and still make a bogey, but that's how life is. Sometimes you don't control it. You don't control the negative things that happen in your life, but you still have to overcome them.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, yeah. Like, if you think about golf and any of the best athletes, when you perform your best, you fall back on just your work. You think of the process. You can't control the result. And as a metaphor, that's exactly what we're experiencing with a newborn, with a baby. You can't control so much. You can only do, what you think is best. You can only plan and do so many things, and they might not sleep well. They might be fussy. Like it's exactly that. Like that's exactly what we're experiencing, and we're having to just like trust process, because we have to trust that the things we're doing will allow him to grow and develop healthily. But we may lose a lot of sleep over it, even though we did everything right. You still might not get the good result. And I experience that immensely in YouTube now, because you put a lot of effort and you work very hard in your videos, and most of the time they don't get received the way you anticipate them being received. So it's just like, it's the exact same thing. You got to just focus on what you can control. As cliche as it really in every, like that's life. If you focus on what you can't control, you will struggle.
Well, especially with like YouTube as well as golf. I read that you would sort of attach your worth to your golf scores, and as content creators, we can do the same thing with views. You attach your mood, you attach your value or your worth to those numbers, and it's tough to not be able to do that.
Oh, big time, because it's just the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the world that we live in. Like exterior results are just and it's really, really easy to associate value to them, and then it's like your own value. I remember my first year on tour, a guy a few years older than me gave me a piece of advice, and it was like, because a lot of times as a player and even as a content creator, you derive confidence from good performance, and you fall into the trap of thinking, if I do well, I then feel confident. But you have to feel confident. Like self-confidence comes first, then performance comes and the result. But if you're waiting for result to create performance confidence, to create self-confidence, it's just a house of cards. But that's kind of everything, right? Just going in and having confidence in yourself, your work, your efforts, your relationships, your personality, like all that stuff, like just having confidence in it, confident in like what you're doing, and you still have no guarantee of how it does.
Yeah, exactly. And you get that sort of like dopamine kick, whether you do well on a YouTube video or whether you do good on the golf course. You like you said, you get that boost of confidence. But if you attach so much the results to how you feel, how you value yourself, how you value your worth, that can get pretty dangerous. And especially if you get into a pattern of things not going right, it can start to make you think these dark thoughts, or especially those self-doubts, and making up stories in your mind can be so tough to eliminate.
Yeah, because again, you just, as quickly as you can rise, the peak of feeling good about yourself because you're doing good, you can go down the other side just as fast. But then it's a lot harder. The peak, the mountaintop is a short time for anyone, for any team, athlete, whatever it is, but even just corporate world, whatever. Being on top is very small. You don't stay there for a long time. Yet being in a valley, where I can make a valley way deeper than it should be, because of just where my head goes and what I've come to learn about is an illness I have. And yeah, so it's just like it's just constant battle, effort, strategy to kind of keep those valleys level, and know they won't stay forever. But when you're in them, it's very easy to think you will never get out of them.
Right, exactly. And especially, being able to be confident that things are going to change, and,
being confident that you're not always going to stay in this. And the biggest thing that I've learned, going through, mental illness struggles is being able to change your perspective and being able to, not allow your mind to overthink or, position these things in your mind to where like you start to have that self-doubt. You start to make up stories in your mind, and especially within golf, like within failures that you had in golf. Because I mean, with that game, it's with so many holes. I mean, you can fail so many times throughout just one game. And so how have you been able to change your perspective and not allow that self-doubt to creep in over the
Well, I
years that
think
you've been
it's also
playing?
like it's like failing is how I think I approach it, because you're not associating the result of a shot as success or failure. Yes, you're gonna like you literally cannot control what the golf ball does after it leaves the club face. So it's like you focus on what you can control before you hit the shot, but then even times your mind goes, you think it's a poor thought, you don't execute, but you can be like, hey, that was on me. But then sometimes you just get a bad break and there's nothing about it. So it's more the end result of that's where you can feel like you're failing because you're working so hard and you're getting nothing out of it. Because I think any professional golfer knows that, I mean, over the course of 18 holes, so many things can happen, and you can be doing so many good things for a stretch of holes, and then you just lose your concentration or a bad break happens, and then 3-4 holes, it can be difficult. Then you can get it right back. And it's just like, it's the nature of the game, but it's allowing yourself to just kind of roll with it in spite of it and like stay super healed. But it's difficult because it's so easy when things are difficult on a course to start. You have a lot of idle time between shots to start thinking about what it all means, the implications of it. And the best players in the world don't do that. They just focus on the shot's over. But they don't do that all the time. It's when they're playing their best, that's when that happens. And that's why you don't see PGA Tour player top 10ing single week, because it's impossible. Golf is not like football where you can see a team lose 2 games, go 15-2, or the Dolphins going undefeated in the 70s. Right. Like that doesn't exist in golf. It isn't going to happen. No one is going to birdie all 18 holes. We've been close. We've seen 58, but like no one's going to play a perfect round of golf. So it's just rolling with that, knowing the pace and minimizing, stopping the bleeding, if you will. But then, yeah, I think it's a lot to do with how you got it. And much of my career, I struggled with that. I really struggled with those in-between times of poor play, because you make a couple bogeys, you don't make a birdie, you start to think about what this missed cut or not making money could do, when in all actuality, you don't know. Like, you don't know the outcome. Like I remember a Q school very, very well. I played really well the first round, the second round, okay, the third round. So I was like on maybe like 1 inside the number, and I had a really tough front 9 in the final round. And on the 12th hole, you walk from 11 to 12 across the road. Never forget it. And this was 2009. On that walk, I already had status, but I was like trying to improve my status. I was planning what I would do instead of playing the Canadian. Okay, well, I'm not going to get in many tournaments, so I'm going to play this tour. I'm going to have to go down to North Carolina and do this and do that. So my mind completely not where it should be. So I think I don't remember the exact score. I think for argument's sake, we'll say I was 3 over par for the tournament. And I thought I was falling, because I think I started the day even 1 inside the number. Now it's 3 over. And I'm like, I'm done. Like, I'm not. I finished 6 over for the tournament, and 3 over par, got a card. So when I was thinking I was actually out of it and planning everything else, I was still in it because of just a poor mental approach to the game. I was where I shouldn't have been, and I brought on my own demise there, basically. So yeah, it's a tough ass sport, man.
And that's why I think it's so interesting how it correlates with life so much, because you could, something can happen and you can just go down that trail of making up stories in your mind, or just trying to over plan. And I feel like sometimes that over planning can make us, look at things maybe a little bit more erratically than they might actually seem at the surface level. And so I think especially it's interesting, looking at your story. I can't even imagine how difficult it must have been, especially during your rookie campaign, being so young and feeling like the pressure and stresses of, having to live up to the expectations as all the other people that you're competing up against.
I mean, hindsight, it was, but it also wasn't. It's just ignorance, naivety. I didn't know. And I was thinking about all the wrong things. And at the time, it wasn't a culture. I didn't have someone I could openly talk about the other stuff that was going on in my life. And yeah, we just slipped down a hole for 3.5 years pretty steeply because of bad golf. I mean, hindsight, wouldn't change it for a thing. It's got me where I am now. But yeah, it was I look back on that first year on the Canadian Tour, and it was remember a lot of it, but a lot of it's like a blur. How I just let rounds slip away by just going off in my head. And I started practicing mindfulness meditation in 2013. And it's been a big key in my health, and I just love to do it. And one of the principles you begin to learn is thoughts are simply thoughts. Like, thoughts aren't real. Like, if you think about it, it's fiction. It's complete fiction, because if we're thinking about the future, that's not real. If we're thinking about the past, it's something that doesn't exist anymore. So thoughts are simply like, we're fiction. It's fiction. It's make believe. It's not reality. And I would run with that, and as opposed to just identifying thoughts as thoughts, let them come, let them go. And it's just where you would go, and you're so far from reality. And reality in my situation was hit the green, try to make a putt. Next hole, hit the fairway, hit the green, try to make a putt. It was my reality. But I'm thinking about 3 months from now, 5 months ago, a year from now, or from now. Like, it's just, I was nowhere but present. And it's when Adam Scott won the Masters in 2013, in one of the post interviews, he said, and I always remember this because I do it a lot to myself, because he caught himself, I think, on Saturday starting to think about winning the tournament. And he said, no, stay right here. Stay right here. And then on Sunday, he really started to do it, even when he was coming down the stretch, and he did win in a playoff, but he always had to kind of remind himself, stay right here, because physically you're right there, but mentally you can go all over the place. So it's like reminding yourself to stay right here. And it's a practice that I do a lot. I have to do a lot in everywhere in my life.
Yeah,
because even you think you grab this and start, if I'm sitting with my son and I'm looking at Instagram or I'm answering an email, I'm not right here. I'm not here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's poisonous. Like it's really scary. So it's just something that like I try is the operative word, be good at and being present, because it's just a lot easier to be healthier from that place.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have a bracelet that I wear a lot, and it says live in the moment. And something that I try to remind myself is be where your feet are. And there's a lot of times where, like you said, you can get into that phone and you can try and escape, and you aren't actually living in the moment, but you're starting to overthink about, what do I have to do tomorrow? What do I have to do next week? And then especially when you start to allow your mind to think about the past and how you could change the past. And I think that's so poisonous just in mental health, thinking about how you can change the past and what you could have done differently. But everything happens for a reason at the end of the day, and things happen in your life so you can learn for the future.
These brains of ours are the best and the worst thing we have.
Exactly. And I think especially with today being a Let's Talk National Day, and especially in Canada, but I think it's so fascinating how the idea of mental health, or excuse me, suicide prevention has become such a subject. I think it's so important because with these minds that we have, it's so easy for us to forget about what we're grateful for. It's so easy for us to think about, what if I wasn't here, and make up our minds that people wouldn't really care. But something that you mentioned in one of your videos is the people around you love you more than you can even imagine, and sometimes we forget about that. And for yourself, I kind of connected with you because you had these thoughts at 13 and 14, and I started having mental health issues at 15 and 16. And when I watched your video of you talking about that, I got like a flashback of a video that I made in high school of me talking about my depression openly.
Oh, wow.
And it's crazy because still to this day, it's tough for me to watch that video because I see myself and I hear my voice, and I see how I was, and I just get choked up immediately. But especially looking back on your path, sort of what have you learned through your struggles with those suicidal thoughts?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that I matter. Period. End of story. Yes, I've learned I've got strength and all of these things, but I don't draw a lot of strength from that. Or like whenever over the years of speaking and people tell me I'm super courageous and this and that, I don't think I am. I just think I'm talking about my life. But it's just I realized that I matter and I'm loved. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned, because for so many years it was just easy to think the opposite of that. It was easy to think that I didn't matter. And I think a lot of people this day and age, it's very, very easy to think that, because we have so many external stimulants that vindicate us. And if it's not received well, people didn't care. If there wasn't enough likes, or if there wasn't a comment, whatever it is, we delete it and we share it again, and this and that, like, because we want to feel like we matter to, right now, strangers. And that's tough. Like, people care more about what strangers think about them than the people closest to them. And that's a difficult, I have to raise a son in that world. I'm fucking scared. But yeah, that's just the biggest lesson. And that's like the lesson I will pass to my nephews and nieces, and my son. I just will always want him to know that he is loved and he matters. And I would never want him to have to insinuate it from action. I want him to hear it, because I love my dad to death. He loves me very much, but he's from an older generation. He just turned 8 years old. He didn't share affection. So I knew how much my dad cared about me through action, but mainly through my mom telling me. But I needed to hear it from my dad, because I knew it intellectually, but I didn't know it in my heart. And that was the thing. That's the thing I basically want to do to my son, is I want him to hear it and know it. And that's the biggest thing I learned, basically, for sure.
Interestingly enough, I had a recent conversation with this guy that I can connect you with, he's a parenting mental health coach, and he has kids that are, I believe they're like 5 and 8, and he shares to them, and he tries to teach them, like, it's okay to have emotion. It's okay to speak about if you're not doing okay. It's okay to speak about if you're sad, and to not hold in that emotion. And obviously with men's mental health, it's so prominent for men to not say anything. I'm fine, everything's fine. I need to be strong, I need to be masculine. I can't show any type of emotion. And I think it's so important, not only for the younger generation, but just for men in general, that we realize that it's the biggest thing that will help us be able to get out of this rut or to get out of this feeling is to talk about it, especially with the people that we are closest with.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like, we all experience pain, grief, loss. We all experience it. We all hurt. Yet, for whatever reason, and this is a thing, whenever this is an analogy I make when I speak, especially as men, like, it's very easy for us to talk about physical scars, or culture to tell us it's okay to talk about when you had too much to drink, you fell over, got here from goofing off with your friends, from skateboarding, from football, from hockey, whatever. We can have a beer, we can share that, we can shoot the shit and share all these battle scars we have from being men, from being idiots, basically. Yet it's sharing that people can't see. And that's just something that, for whatever reason, years ago, when this all started speaking up, it was like, nah, I'm not subscribing to that. I don't have a lot of physical scars. I do now, a little bit more after when I broke my arm, but it's ironic because I had a broken arm during 2019 Let's Talk Day, and it fit perfectly. Like, I could tell the story. I fell off a scooter on my back. Everybody has a laugh. But when I tell you the story about, the things I've done to myself, the things I say to myself, and the way I hurt myself, and the scars that live from that, I say it topically, and I can laugh about it. But it's like, people don't necessarily want to talk about that or hear that. But it is changing quite a bit, and like, that's super. I think one of my favorite shows. It just finished, Afterlife, on Netflix. The third season just came, and it's like, brilliantly depicts a mental health issue, a suicidal man, but there's so much humor, and it's real, and it normalizes that conversation, because I'm still super normal. I just have done some terrible things to myself and treated myself terribly, and probably still will in the future. But I'm still normal, and that's is a funny thing to hear, because I've done a lot of like speaking engagements where it was a golf tournament. So I was on box and I was shooting the shit and hit and drive and engage. And then I talk at dinner, and I've had people come like, but you seem so normal. How you wanted to kill yourself? Like, and not every person that's depressed is Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Like, we're normal people. We just have problems that we struggle with, that we need help, that we can't do it on our own, that we need medication, therapy. We need things to help us, just like a diabetic needs things to allow them to be healthy, right? Like, we need things to help us be healthy, but we are still very, very normal. And that's one of the things that I just want to continue to advocate for. I'm not crazy, even though I'm crazy. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's just that.
Well, that's what I love about like the foundation. Same here. We're all crazy in our own ways. Like, we all deal with those demons. We all deal with those doubts. Some people have severities of, anxiety, depression, and being able to be vulnerable about that. It's tough, especially at the start, and especially as men. You get some people who are like, why are you talking about that? Like, you're soft, or and I think it's really courageous of you to be able to be so open about this as a male and an athlete, and that's why I love that it's becoming more of a subject. And I'm curious, how tough was it for you at the start, and how were you able to become comfortable to be able to talk about this stuff so vulnerably?
Honestly, it wasn't very difficult, because I think it's at the start, I approached it probably in a more unhealthy way. I approached it maybe a little bit for like personal gain. I was like, oh, this is going to help my career. But I still, like, the heart was still wanting to share and help, but I knew there was residual effects of maybe this helping my career. And it was a slippery slope. And basically, I started talking way too soon. I probably should have waited a bit till I would healed a little bit more. But it was easy. It was just because I had I've heard other people talk about it, and I connected because it was like, hey, yeah, me too. And I was lucky that I wasn't an accountant. I wasn't a bartender. I was a professional golfer on a 3rd-tier tour in Canada, and people cared in the media to cover this story. And then it just kind of, one domino fell after the other. And I'm an athlete. I like the attention. I have an ego, aware of that. All athletes, we have an ego. We like to do well. We like to perform. We like to accomplish things. So when given the opportunity to speak, it was like, I also have a theater degree, so I'm comfortable on stage and I'm comfortable sharing. I love storytelling. So it was like, I'm given the opportunity, I want to kill it. Like, I want to learn from this and do better. Let me hear the feedback. Okay. I want to do better. I want to do better. And it's just like, I went from strength to strength. It came very naturally. It still hurt. Like I learned over time that it would have a negative effect on my health after speaking, rehashing some really difficult things. And you're getting a lot of people loading on you their pain. And I can't fix that. I'm not a professional. I'm not an expert. I just have my lived experiences, and I can just encourage. But you're getting emails, messages, people coming to you with some heavy shit. And even people saying, I'm alive because of you. That's a lot to take. Like, you can't just like, oh, cool, wicked, awesome. So touched. Like, that's very like, it's a lot of responsibility.
Well, it must also make you feel good.
A lot.
You know, thinking back, like to how you were feeling, and like you can put yourself in their situation.
I guess I've always kind of insulated myself to getting too caught up in that. Whereas kind of when I share that with her, or if I got a message or something, because even when I get messages to this day, like, it takes me a while to respond to them, because it's like, whoa, it feels like a lot of responsibility. But nonetheless, it's just like, it encourages you, even as like, I mean, man, I was hospitalized just over 10 years ago, and I don't talk about 10 years ago. I talk about now whenever I speak. My talk is evolved. It's easy sometimes to think it's not relevant anymore, like my over it, whatever it is, but like, it just encourages me to keep going and jump at any opportunity. I love it. I know it does good. I'm not do good, if that makes sense. Like, it's not like, oh, I need the vindication. I need the pat on my back. I just really made a promise to myself that was like, as long as there's air in your lungs, you're going to tell this story. So there you go. Like I said, I hold myself to a high standard. So it's like, I want to do a good job. I don't ever want to like phone it in, waste anyone's time. It's just, that's the fun thing about being an athlete. Like, you approach things with a serious level and a serious amount of commitment. So that's, I guess it's weird. It's just, it came really easy, and I just kept getting encouragement by doing it, because it counteracted not performing well on the golf course, right? I was getting indication for performing well by sharing what I'd been through, but I responded to that healthily by wanting to get better at it and continue to get better personally, rather than going down the slippery slope of like, oh, this is people telling me I'm good enough. Thankfully, I had healed, and I knew I was good enough. I knew I mattered. So I could share from that place, not from a place, because I've done a lot of speaking events where there's people that spoke that shouldn't have been speaking, that weren't healthy enough, weren't healed enough. It was too raw, and they still had some healing to do. And the desire to connect and be received and be told, you're courageous, good for you, I'm glad you're still here, was that intrinsic motivator. And that's tough. It's a very thin line.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. And something that I thought was really cool watching back on some of your videos is you being a theater major, like, helped you be able to mask the feeling a little bit. I feel like some people are able to seem like they're okay on the outside, but on the inside it's tough to fully realize like what they're going through. And I don't want to make you, like you said, you don't like looking back too much, but I'm always curious to hear what people's thoughts are on this. But sort of what advice would you give to your younger self, if there was any advice?
If I were to give myself advice, it'd just be to talk about it. Like, don't feel too proud to talk about it. Because in 2008, my doctor mentioned it to me, and I was like, nah. So if I were to give any advice to Andrew, it would be like, it's not a sign of weakness. It doesn't make you less than. You're not inferior because you hurt, because you struggle. It's not just demons on the golf course. It won't go away by playing better golf. This is something that needs to be taken care of, monitored. It's your health. It's that simple. Health is literally all we have, and physical and mental. It's part and parcel. They're the same. And that's kind of what I would tell a younger Andrew. But yeah, that'd probably be it. And try to save any platitudes.
Yeah, I think that's so important too. Just to be able to talk about it and feel, comfortable talking about it, and that people aren't going to judge you. I feel like that's always like the anxiousness of that we're going to get judged, and kind of like you said before, that we're crazy, that we're not normal. And I think that's so important. And for anybody that wants to follow your journey and support you, where can they find you, Andrew?
So you can find me on YouTube, just my name, Andrew Jensen, or on Instagram, Andrew S. Jensen.
Perfect, man. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing not only your insight, but your story.
Cool, man. I'm glad. Thanks.
I hope that you did enjoy my conversation with Andrew Jensen, was able to learn a little bit about not only how he was able to overcome his mental health struggles in his personal and professional life, but you're able to take those lessons that he learned through those dark times and apply to your own life. And you're able to feel inspired after listening to this episode. That's one of my biggest goals with each and every single episode, that you feel inspired, motivated to go out there and live life to the fullest and not allow your mental health struggles to really deter you as well as weigh you down each and every single day. I want you to be able to feel like you want to run through a brick wall and really go and dominate life after each time you listen to this podcast. But if you have not yet, make sure to subscribe over on YouTube or whatever audio platform that you're listening to right now, because I post episodes bi-weekly, and I have a lot more great episodes in the vault ready to post. So if you want to get notified for when I post episodes bi-weekly, make sure to subscribe, and also follow Iggy Sports Talk over on Instagram if you want to get updates regarding the podcast and also see different clips from the most recent episodes and past episodes as well. But as always, I greatly appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will see you and talk to you next time. Peace.